Nice House by the Sea, issue 4, James Tynion IV, writing with Álvaro Martínez Bueno on the art. So, last issue was the big one where a few of the characters of the original house were in the world of the second house.
Mm-hmm.
This issue continues on from there in some really interesting ways, where people in both houses kind of start to think and discuss and talk about what it means that there's another house and potentially the pitfalls of what's going forward. And it kind of presents the Nice House by the Sea as the more intimidating house, because some of the characters, the ones who control that world, who've got the controls and monitor people, turns out they've got like little GPS trackers on everyone with this tech, and they know that there was 3 extra people there, and they go to question Oliver, the actor, about it. To the point where they start like using the controls to take away like the bones in his legs to torture him because he won't tell them anything. Yeah. So that gets super dark on that side of the story. And then,
this is where Tynion remembered this is a horror story, because when the guys go, we'll just take his bones. And I was just like, oh no, and you see him fall.
Yeah.
And it's ghastly.
Yeah, it's really wild stuff. Which is the sci-fi elements obviously allow them to be that grotesque. But then in the main house, the original house by the lake, the characters, like, I loved the conversations they were having about all this. Obviously, there's some backstory kind of filled out again about Oliver and the fact that Walter was super into Oliver, and they tell a story how he was Walter was taken to a play and Walter wanted to leave and his friend didn't know why, and it wasn't until afterwards that all of the friend group like actually got mad at the comedian character from taking him there, because that's Oliver. That's the infamous guy that Walter was into that ditched him when he went to college.
Yeah, and here's the thing too. The play that they're seeing is Midsummer's Night's Dream, right? Which is a Shakespeare play which is about the gods meddling with mortals just because they're bored. And I'm wondering if that's a tell on where Tynion's going with this story.
I mean, I don't know if it's going to go in the same place, but that is absolutely an intentional, nudge. There's no way that's not intentional.
Oh yeah. But just the whole idea of him being in this play, right, and sets Walter off on this whole, almost starts Walter's spiral. I like that part too.
Yeah, but it doesn't lead to what happens. And these things with the houses was always going to happen. That was always there beforehand. And it's worth mentioning that despite all we hear about Oliver ditching Walter and going to a different college, even though, because it kind of answers why Walter has a completely different group of friends from college than he does from high school. It's like 2 separate groups that he's got. It's because he actually moved across country to a college that he thought Oliver was going to, rather than going to the college that all of his friends were going to, only to find out that Oliver had changed his mind without telling him to get, to run away. The reason for that, we don't know yet. I'm sure that's something that might come up.
Yeah.
But that seems to be this point where he ended up building an entire second group of friends. And that's why we have these 2 sort of eras of where he met people. I like that because it was like, oh, this didn't really need an explanation, but I like that there's a little reason as to why it's a completely separate group of people.
Yeah, well, and it also shows that he's also kind of very possessive, right? Because the way that he goes to fight him at
we knew
school,
that, Matt. Let's be honest, we knew that.
No, yeah, but it shows like this drove him to be even more possessive of his friends, right? Like, had Oliver, been more truthful with him, how different is Walter's life, right?
Well, I think what's fascinating is there's a page here, this is before all the stuff goes down, where the other guys come to like question him, where Oliver's on his own and he's got a shoebox full of photographs with him and Walter when they were teenagers, which does imply that Walter did mean something to him, right? Like, it's not just that he hates Walter necessarily. And I think exploring, maybe the reason why he ran away from Walter is because on some level he was, I don't know, maybe it wasn't so much, I don't want anything to do with that loser. Maybe it was more, this is getting too intense, or he knows too much and he's scared of the alien stuff, if he knew that at the time. I can't remember if he did or not. But, there's stuff to explore here, and it definitely came across intimidating the way that other characters came in. There's also these great little flashback pages where it's like security camera footage of like when Walter was like enrolling in college, and there's some confusion because he pulled out of that place like 2 weeks earlier, And it's like this footage gets deleted because obviously he's on camera transforming as an alien, so
Yeah.
he has to get rid of it. So whatever.
Well, and just it's almost like he's having complete mental breakdown because right, you follow the cameras and it feels like you're pulling out more, and you get to the page where he's coming out of the windows and up towards the other camera, and you kind of see his face, and he looks more like he's in anguish than anger, right? So
maybe a little column A, a little column B potentially. It does seem like this is when he found out that Oliver had ditched him effectively, right? That's it feels like that's what this moment is. But the main house, the original house, is the one that truly fascinates me though, because one, you've got Nora feeling weird because of the whole Max thing and doesn't even want to go to the meeting that everyone has. But the rest of the group have this conversation about what to do now. And everything they talk about, obviously, because obviously some of the group didn't know the whole Oliver saga. Yeah. The ones who knew him in high school explain it, so we get that. And I love how he points out, this is without any of the alien shit added in, but it explains the Oliver stuff and it explains the Max stuff. And that it sounds like Max and Walter knew each other and went to the same prep school. And maybe that's, as they theorize, is prep school just code for alien training for human integration or whatever.
Yeah. Alien boot camp.
But so they explain kind of how they were separate and that Walter got mad at Max for breaking up with Nora at the time and sort of ruining all that. And that's obviously why Nora feels weird about all this Max stuff. But what really gets fascinating to me here is they start questioning it. Look, eventually the powers that be, whoever's in charge of these aliens, was going to figure out that something happened to Walter. But they point out that it could have been centuries before they even noticed because of, the lifespans of these beings, the timelines, whatever. It could have been centuries that we had in here before anyone even noticed that something was wrong, before they came and just stamped us out for whatever reason. But because 3 of them have went to the other house, and that Max might come asking questions or looking, there's a chance now that at any minute, the powers that be will find out that something's not right, that Walter has died. Seemingly, right? They think he's dead. I'm not convinced.
No.
I think he's the dog. But the point is that they now have to live under this like constant fear that they're about to be found out. And then to add on to that, this idea that they've realized that Walter was meant to find and build a house that's full of the best of the best, the best of each field, the best artists, the best, the idea that all these houses are competing. And it's like, but he didn't do that with us. So he already broke the rules. We're already kind of like not supposed to be here. There's 2 artists as well, which is also breaking the rules. Like all of this is all showing that he wasn't playing in the way that he was supposed to. He was doing all this stuff. And then it gets really interesting later when they're sort of continuing these thought lines where they mention that, okay, he knew that all these houses were competing and only one gets to live at the end. And he chose to put the house full of people that he cared about rather than the best of the best because he wanted it to be people that he actually felt something for, right? So presumably he wants us to win. However, if he wants us to win, then that means he thinks that the other houses would all die. Therefore, the problem there is that we know how much he cares about Oliver, and he knows that Oliver's in the other house. So, and they're like, oh shit. And I actually, like, they kind of explain what they think by the end of the issue, but even as soon as one of them said, oh shit, I was like, wait a minute, is this implying that he intentionally put the house full of people that he didn't think would win to save Oliver's life? I thought that for a second, but then the conclusion they get to, which might be right, and it's also fascinating, is that, and this is another example of Walter continually to bend and break the rules that he's supposed to be working under, is that they then come to the conclusion that Walter intentionally had a gateway to the other house because Walter wants them to save Oliver from the other house and bring Oliver to their house, which makes me think, does Walter have like a plan to like rig the game so that his house wins? Like, I will say this, when they think of this suggestion, the dog, who I suspect is Walter, seems very happy about that and gets all
wagging his tail. Yeah,
he's licking him in the face. That's how it ends. Is the dog's delighted about this.
Well, and there's a bit more sinister stuff there too, because he says he wants Oliver to finally choose him to say that he was right.
Yes.
And that's not just he wants to save his friend. It's like, no, I was right. Now, tell me I'm right. And you're just like, Walter's almost there. He's almost.
And maybe it's kind of working because, you know, like I said, there's that scene in the other house where Oliver's looking at the photographs of Walter and clearly reflecting on his past. So maybe he is getting to that point.
And just the way the whole other house turns on Oliver too, right? You know, that there's a group of them that elect to, you know, where's he going? You know, and they choose to take his legs out and whatever. So it just shows that house is also full of not good people.
Well, yeah, I mean, the whole point there is that they want to know more about these people that were here. Yeah. Like, so Oliver, tell us about them, tell us everything you know, and he doesn't want to. He basically says, piss off. And then they use the magic powers of the house to take away his bones and his legs, and he collapses. And it's basically just a form of torture to try and make him speak. It's very horrific. It's very monstrous. I think it furthers the idea that was already established that the people in Oliver's house are, because they are actually the best of the best in their fields, they are very egotistical, they're very arrogant, and they're very cutthroat, very much the 1% of the 1% ensuring that they're the ones who are going to live. You know, it's the idea of the billionaire with their bunker who will survive the nuclear apocalypse saying, no, you poors get out. I must be the one who lives. And it feels like all this asking questions is them wanting to kill the original house. They want to, like, make sure they're going to win by taking out the other one. Now, whether that means they're going to try and sneak over and kill them, or just rat them out to max, or, you know, whatever the path is that they're going to take, it feels that they're asking for malicious reasons to try and take out the other house. Whereas our original house, full of our more normal quote unquote people, they just are questioning, okay, does this mean we're in danger, and should we save Oliver because that's clearly what Walter wanted? Like, I don't know, very, very, like, not that I doubted Tynion in any way, shape, or form, but I am so impressed with a few issues into this second series, how it feels like everything's coming together in this really weird way that feels like it just makes sense to me.
It really does feel like a season 2 of a TV show.
It does, and because the groundwork was laid, and it's adding this new context to some of the things that we always knew, like the different ages of the two friend groups, one that he built in high school, then college. Now there's a reason for that actually makes sense.
And look, I'm not going to say I can remember all the names of the characters, but the characterization is so strong.
I mean, I can barely remember the names of any of the characters, never mind all of them.
Right. But, you know, we know who the actor is, right? We know the characterization there. We know Nora. We know, I mean, Nora's probably the only one that I really remember because they say her name so much, right?
Yeah. And I remember, you know, like, I mean, I can remember it now because I just read this. It's Ryan, but the blue-haired artist was the last-minute substitute. Like, I remember that about her. I remember about Reggie. I remember a few of them. So no,
my point is the characterization is still so strong, right? That as you're reading this, you don't really need to remember their names. Everything still clicks.
Not so much. And the other thing we haven't mentioned yet, actually, is that when they're talking about what to do, they're like, hey, what if they come and try and check because we snuck over there? And they're basically saying, can we trick them? Can we fool whoever's going to come and check into thinking that Walter's still alive? And they suggest a few things, but basically they're like, oh, do we weekend at Bernie's it? And someone suggests that, hey, what if we just say that Walter, like, we found out stuff, we got mad at Walter and said we didn't want to see him, so he's off sulking somewhere. And I like that because they kind of point out that that's what Walter was like. Walter would go into moods and, like, go off on his own. So this idea that they can maybe bluff their way through if someone does come to check, but they also point out, well, we have to get rid of Walty's tombstone then. And also, there's a problem with, like, if they realize that one of us died, then why is there still 12 people? Because it should only be 11 at this point. Like, all these, like, details are just so well ingrained at this point, and I love how they're all playing off of each other. It's making it super exciting. And the funny thing is even though the main house doesn't know this idea of, like, oh, maybe Walter wants us to save Oliver, that comes up right after we see Oliver being tortured by his house. So he actually does need saving. It's not just about saving him from the eventual, oh, one house is going to win, and if his house loses, he'll die. No, he is living a miserable existence over there at the moment, and probably could use some saving. So,
well, and it felt like, well, he didn't like the other people there either, because from the beginning, from that first issue,
yes,
he was off by himself a lot, and they mentioned that. you know. So again, it just works on those levels. I also just want to point out the, you know, in the characterization that I was bringing up, that I think it's the, who's the bald guy? Let me go to the blonde guy at the end. He is the pianist, right? When he's talking to Ryan, just their entire back and forth about, you know, moving the gravestone and stuff.
Yeah.
I see that's a lot of good character writing here. You know, you can feel the chemistry between them. About that. And so I like seeing, like, again, like it's like a second season of a TV show. You see other relationships developing.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, for sure.
So,
yeah, and that stuff's really well done. It's juggling a lot of characters, it's juggling a lot of big ideas. And I think the idea at the house that's new for this season, quote unquote, the Sea House, is that, yeah, it's effectively turned that house, barring one character, into a group of villains, effectively, very quickly. So it does make it feel like they're against each other. And our house of, you know, quote unquote, good characters aren't even aware how much of a threat the other house is yet. Like, because everything we see in the Nice House by the Sea in this issue implies that they are a threat, that they're going to try and, in some way or other, screw over the original house because they see it as a competition that they need to win. Whereas our house are only concerned with surviving, which fundamentally just feels like that makes sense. Like, if you think about the real world and you think about, you know, your billionaires versus your poors, the poor people are just trying to survive, where the billionaires like, how can I become more billionaire? How can I become more successful? So
right, I need it all.
Yes.
They can't have any. It's all for me. Yeah.
Line must go up forever. Infinite growth, all that jazz. So yeah, this was excellent. Arguably the best issue of this series so far. Meaning that this particular
the section.
Yeah. Nice House by the Sea specifically.
Yeah.
Yeah, great. And obviously, you know, we haven't mentioned the art yet, but you almost get into like a lull of not doing it because it's the same artist every issue and it's the same standard of excellence. But I want to point out that after they take Oliver's legs and it's all bloody and whatever, they also say, oh, we'll have him speak later. For now, take away his mouth. And it's kind of like that scene in The Matrix where the mouth closes up and it's just skin. Phenomenal stuff. Phenomenal art. And of course, the photograph of him and Walter that he was holding, or it was in his book, floats away. So, no, very, very interesting. And it also makes you question as well, did Max specifically pick Oliver just to piss off Walter?
Well, and I want to know what happened with Max and Nora, because the way that Nora goes on, like, Max is the devil. That, you know, I want to see that story.
We're absolutely going to get that in one of these issues. I have no doubt about that. You know, excellent stuff. Even just something as simple as the sort of the guy who leads the charge on torturing Oliver. When Oliver walks into that little sort of terrace area with the tables for breakfast, the way that other character's sitting there in the chair is like, this is the art doing this. The art is telling us this guy is evil. He's threatening. We should be scared of him. Oliver's all confident, of course, but then they gang up on him and start using the controls to mutilate him, basically. So phenomenal stuff. Matt, what are you giving Nice House by the Sea?
8.5.
9.5.
Oh, got you.
That was excellent. This was phenomenal. The way everything's coming together and building, like, it's not just a great read now, it's actually like it's built so much good stuff that it's exciting. The cliffhangers are genuinely like, oh god, I can't wait to see how this develops next.